Broadcast history is about to be made.
Extreme close-up!
I want you to find out who these guys are and where they do their show.
What is this?
Mr. Vanderhoff, this is your audience.
It's two chimps on a Davenport in a basement.
Here I am with the contract for $5,000.
Excuse me?
Now they're on their way
No way.
to fame.
Will you still love me when I'm in my carbohydrate sequin jumpsuit? Young girls in white cotton panties, bloated, purple, dead on a toilet face?
To fortune.
Contractor, no. I will not bow to any sponsor.
And to babe heaven.
What
What do you do if every time you see this one incredible woman, you think you're gonna hurl?
I say hurl. If you blow chunks and she comes back, she's yours. If you spew and she bolts, it was never meant to be.
Okay.
It's Wade.
This is definitely the type of place I'm gonna get when I move out of my parents' house.
It's Garth.
I love you, God.
If she were a president, she'd be Abraham Lincoln.
It's a movie.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Wayne's World.
Highway.
It just might be the greatest motion picture ever made.
Welcome, everyone, to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those two worlds collide. I'm your host, Steve Guntley. Party on, everybody. Who else is joining me today?
I'm J-Ban. Party on.
Party on.
Justin, hello.
No, you don't want to party on?
Party on.
Oh, we almost had to kill and eat you there. That could have gotten really bad. That's what happens in Wayne's World 3. Somebody fails to say party on, and they kill and eat him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one only got released
Definitely,
in
I'm
Tokyo.
guessing they took a dystopian turn.
It did. It got real dark real quick. They always have to do the gritty reboots.
Do you remember Highlander?
I never saw Highlander.
Highlander is such a weird movie. Like, it's really great and weird.
Yeah.
But especially Highlander 2, when it's like
Quickening?
The Quickening. Okay, I'll save it for a future podcast.
Yeah, wait, the quickening didn't make sense to you? You can't succinctly explain what quickening is to all
like
of us?
being electrocuted in a storm after you decapitate someone because you're an alien.
By the moon? Kind of? Doesn't the moon have something to do with it? It's been a while.
No, it's not the moon. It's just the electricity in the air. And you're taking their power.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also watched the TV show. Like, other than the sexy accents and swords. I love the sexy accents and swords.
The Scottish accent by way of deep France. Yeah, Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery's perfect Spanish accent.
Perfect Spanish accent.
Hello, I'm from Spain.
They have a movie where people are speaking in Scottish accents.
Yes.
And they have Sean Connery be Sean Connery.
Your two leads are Christopher Lambert, a very French actor, and Sean Connery, a very Scottish actor.
Sean Connery Spanish.
Sean Connery does not do voices. He does his voice. That's all he can do. And they just rolled with it because he's charismatic as fuck.
Did you know Sean Connery was once in South Pacific in Edinburgh? He was in the South Pacific production. I would love to see him as like eats nothing like a dame.
Oh, there's nothing like a dame. Nothing in the world. Bring on Moneypenny. Of course, obviously, today we are talking about Highlander. No, we're talking about Wayne's World. But we're going to come around. I'm going to see if there's a Highlander game because I want to come around to this conversation.
Right?
Also, one last thought on Highlander. It bothers me that there's more than one. There should be only one.
I mean, the only thing I know about Highlander is, I know two things. One, there should only be one. And two, if you cut somebody's head off, I guess you get their power.
Yeah, you're the
eat
new
them?
one.
I don't know.
And the killer Queen songs.
Which this movie has in common, actually.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoa, hey, that was actually a pretty seamless
ooh, a
segue. I see. You're
segue.
playing the long game here. I appreciate that. Yes, today we are talking about Wayne's World. Yes, there is a video game based on Wayne's World. You may be thinking, I saw that movie. It doesn't really lend itself to a video game format. You'd be surprised how right you are.
100% accurate take.
But I am excited to be talking about this. This is one of my favorite movies. Like, this is just a movie that brings me such abject joy. I think it's one of the best comedies of the 90s, and it's a movie I've probably seen 30-something times. And I'm going to debate this with you. I was debating it with my girlfriend about, is this the movie that you could use as shorthand for the 90s? She argues Clueless, which is a really hard one to dissuade.
Yeah.
But I would also argue that Wayne's World set the table for Clueless in a lot of ways. I think Clueless is building off of what's established in this movie.
I think that's true. I think definitely Clueless is building off of the sort of comic characters built in Wayne's World. And I think I feel like it's a quintessentially 90s movie, which is really funny because it's only 92, and a lot of movies around 92 have the 80s feel to them.
And that's what I love about this movie. I feel like this movie, it is firmly in the 90s. Like, it is like shot in the 90s, it's set in the 90s, like it is firmly in that era, but it is that weird kind of metamorphosing state where like grunge music has happened, it's ascendant, but the like hair metal is still kind of in its death throes. So we're getting that crossover culture of like there's a little bit of the glam, there's a little bit of the grunge, and like we haven't gone fully cynical yet, but we also aren't quite as silly and like excessive as the glam rock era. So it's like it's kind of capturing that perfect moment before like during the transition, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit maybe not surprised, but I was like, oh yeah. Because at one point I was pretty sure I just heard Chris Cornell's voice. Like
he probably
one of the
is.
songs that was playing was a Soundgarden song, and
or it could have been like even Temple of the Dog or one of his early bands
Temple
or something.
Dog,
Yeah. I mean, it's
Eddie Vedder.
Yeah. It's like super early kind of proto grunge stuff, but it is everybody looks like they're at a Poison concert. You know, like so it's kind of blending those worlds.
This is before my dad cut his hair.
Oh yeah, did your dad do the long hair?
Yes.
My dad has been growing out his hair, I think, for the last 25 years. Like, now that he's retired, he doesn't give a shit. And my sister braids it for him. It like, goes all the way down his back. He's 71 years old, and he's got a ponytail down to his butt crack. So
yeah, I actually weirdly funny story about my dad having long hair. When it came time to cut his hair, he's like, "Well, what?" They met this guy, and he was one of the local barbers, and they met him like outside of things. And he had basically gotten through like school, hair cutting school, whatever,
like barber school,
school, by cutting hippies' hair during that transition period of now we want short hair again,
right?
And so he's like, "Oh yeah, I've done this hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. Let's go."
It's muscle memory at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm envious of people who can do that. Like I have a lot of hair, but it grows tall. Like my hair can't grow long. It just grows up. So I can't do the cool like headbangy hairstyles. But
mine did that until I switched what I was using for shampoo and conditioners, and a little bit about like the processes of everything, how often I was doing things, stuff like that. The routine.
A mark in every young man's life when they start to take care of their hair.
Yeah,
it only took 28 years. I got
oh, you
there.
Just started.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No, it was actually a year or two ago because during the pandemic I shaved my head at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And then didn't get a haircut for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And so my hair was like getting down past my shoulder a little bit. Went to a concert and was like, "Oh, this is great! I can pull my hair up off my neck, and this feels incredible."
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this movie really, like, it's kind of blending those eras in a really awesome way, and like, so I want to ask your guys' experience with this movie, because this one was pretty seminal for me growing up, but I think I am a little older than both of you, so like, I'm curious, did this have the same kind of cultural penetration?
It was a childhood movie for me.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely had no idea what schwing meant.
No.
I
now know it as the thing that kills kazoos. But,
that is all it's good for.
I was a small child, and I remember my parents wouldn't let me stay up to watch Saturday Night Live, so when they were asleep, I would sneak up and watch Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And so, like, watching Wayne's World from Saturday Night Live, I can't remember if it was before or after the movie came out. I mean, it must have been after. watching reruns or something.
Yeah.
But I just remember just being like, every time a pretty lady's on screen, they do this schwing thing, as like, oh, they just must think they're pretty. I had no idea that it was because of they had boners.
I definitely used to say it on the playground without knowing what it meant. Yeah, and I think I got away with it because the teachers didn't know what it meant either. So, but yeah, it's a boner, people. It's a boner.
When it first happened, I had like a Spaceballs flashback.
Oh, the Schwartz,
yeah. I was like, wait a minute, what movie am I watching? But yeah, I watched Wayne's World for the first time at like 22. So
okay, so this is kind of a
I
newer
knew what was
experience
happening. It was probably honestly even later than that.
What was like your understanding of the movie like when you came to it? Is it like still held in high regard? Like, do people talk about this movie anymore?
I mean, every once in a while you'll hear like the Party On Garth reference, and
yeah,
I think I've heard like 4 No Stairway references in my life.
Yeah,
but I think it's probably pretty niche, especially since a lot of people these days, me included, were born after the movie came out.
Rub it in.
So we wasn't a thing to just. Like the 5-year period had already gotten there before my memory even had a chance of beginning.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't relevant. It wasn't like modernly relevant to any part of my life.
Yeah.
And so like I knew of it. I'd heard stuff. I'd heard references. But definitely I don't think... I think I heard less references to Wayne's World than E.T. Phone Home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that one's everywhere. I want to talk a little bit about SNL because this is really kind of our best opportunity to talk about the show. Technically, there is another video game adaptation based on a SNL movie, if you count the Blues Brothers. Some people do, some people don't.
I love the Blues Brothers.
Blues Brothers is great. The game's not so much, but that's...
The soundtracks are so good.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
I feel like they introduced me to blues music.
I know.
I got the soundtracks and I played them until like they wore out, like on CD.
I mean, because they're in this kind of nebulous space because... I think they did technically debut on SNL. It was made, obviously the Blues Brothers are 2 SNL actors, but it's never really been associated with that. Like they had their own albums, they had their own movie. They were kind of always their own thing. Like, and I think you don't really immediately associate them with SNL the way you would with Wayne's World. Wayne's World is an SNL movie. So depending on your definition, this is either the first or second SNL movie. And because this was so successful, I think it became like the 8th highest grossing movie of 1992, which is awesome.
Ooh.
It was so successful, it spawned like this whole run of SNL movies that are almost all terrible. And I think that's why, it kind of beat the whole genre into the ground. We got like It's Pat, we got Night at the Roxbury, we got Superstar, Ladies Man, things like that. I don't think we got another good one till MacGruber, which was like almost 20 years after this. So it has kind of a toxic reputation, and it's something I think it's good that they don't try anymore because it's really hard to stretch like a 10-minute skit, and SNL skits tend to be very catchphrase focused, so it's hard to build a 90-minute narrative movie around that. And I think this one succeeds because it does not try to stick to the format of the show. So the Wayne's World skits on the show were basically just, it was the cable access show that they have here. It's just them. We're watching their cable access show. They're usually like doing top 10 lists of like just different random things that are on their mind. It's basically an early podcast, and it's just kind of these very, very specific weird characters that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey came up with. And I don't know the synthesis that went into making this a movie. I know the skits were popular, but eventually this just got spearheaded into a film. This was Mike Myers' I think his film debut, I want to say. He might have had one or two smaller projects in Canada or something, but this was his film debut, and it just was this runaway hit. They followed it up immediately with Wayne's World 2 the following year. So it was just like such an immediate turnaround. And that movie's fine. It's a step down, but it's fine for how quick and shoddy they put it together. And then Mike Myers is kind of this weird figure because he works like once or twice a decade turns out something that's massively successful and then disappears. Like, so it's like Wayne's World, Austin Powers, once that Shrek, and then it disappears for like 15 years, and then he pops in Inglourious Bastards, and then disappears, and then the Love Guru sucks, and he disappears.
He was in Inglourious Bastards?
Yeah.
It was a British captain.
Yeah, he gives Michael Fassbender his mission. It's just kind of it's a one scene performance, but he's good.
In the Queen biopic, he rejects the Bohemian Rhapsody.
Is he? Okay, okay,
Which
yeah.
is like a complete inside joke to have, Wayne reject the Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a second because I've got more to say about that. But yeah, I mean, what are your opinions on SNL in general?
So I have never seen an episode of SNL.
Okay.
I've only seen skits on TikTok, and that's it.
I feel like that's the way it's digested now,
Yeah.
which is probably better because the show is like 2.5 hours long. Like,
it's an hour and a half long.
Oh, is it that? Okay.
It's an hour and a half long.
Maybe it just feels longer because
it
the
would go
back
from
hours.
11:30 till 1 a.m. And then Soul Train would come on.
Oh, you okay? I got infomercials in my market. Yeah, I would learn about the slap chop.
I love Saturday Night Live, and I still can't believe how much I got to watch without my parents' permission.
Yeah.
I was a horrible child. I watched it when I was 6 years old because my parents were watching it on TV, and I would stand behind the couch, and when they got up, I would throw myself on the floor. And so, they were watching this horror movie when they were having the creepy, 5 or 6 year old child just staring at the back of their heads.
Like a famously traumatizing movie for a lot of people.
I was so traumatized by it, and I couldn't tell them that I was scared because then they would know I was sneaking up.
Oh yeah.
I learned that Santa Claus wasn't real because I had a little tiny TV in my room. I'm talking like a 14-inch. I think this thing used to be in like a camper that a family member owned, and I really wanted to watch the Cowboy Bebop movie.
Okay.
And it was on that night. And so I stayed up, and I heard them wrapping all of Santa's gifts.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, what is happening? Hello? And I'm just, listening at the door going, oh, no. Santa's not real. I did not tell them for years after.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh, 7 or 8.
Okay.
Aww, so cute.
I think I learned Santa doesn't exist
It's probably like 10.
when Justin Wilhelm was on a podcast and mentioned that Santa doesn't exist.
Look.
It really broke my heart.
Hold on. Let's take a moment and mourn all of us here today who may or may not have just learned that Santa Claus doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I hope that you are able to recover from this pain that I have caused you.
Yeah, as long as the Easter Bunny is still good, then we're fine.
Steve, we need to talk about
Shut
something
your
after
whore
the
mouth.
podcast.
No.
When we're done here today, we need to have a conversation.
Damn it. For me, for my SNL experience, I'm always more fascinated by it as an institution than as a show. I think as a show, it's pretty hard to watch. I think they always have individual moments of brilliance, and it's more interesting to me as this institution and as this kind of incubator for some of the most talented people who've ever done comedy. It's kind of insane.
The thing about SNL is that it's not all good.
No.
And
when your show is on for 45 years or coming up on 50, yeah.
Well, and even they do an hour and a half every week, and you think these they might have 1 or 2 really good sketches in that hour and a half, and a lot of them are topical news-based sketches that don't age well. During the pandemic, I tried to go back and watch Saturday Night Live from the beginning.
Oh.
And then I transitioned to YouTube clips because I was just like,
it's just kind of the more digestible way to watch it. Yeah.
There's some genius moments when Steve Martin does his dance or
the King Tut. Yeah. King Tut was great.
Just he also does this really hilarious thing with Gilda Radner where he just does this overly emotive ballroom dance. And it's hilarious. But trying to sit through. And they have there was a lot more music when it started off. When it started
I feel
off,
they pared that down. Yeah.
There was a lot more live music. But I just there's moments. Well, it's so funny when you like comparing Saturday Night Live to a pure like sketch show like Key and Peele,
Yeah.
or Chappelle Show. There's just so many like. Sometimes this like I don't think it's a negative comparison. I just think that they have a higher volume. It's a higher volume game.
You're turning skits around like so quickly, and I think it's become distracting for me in recent years because I can't not see them reading the cue cards. And for whatever reason, like back in the 90s when I was watching lots of SNL reruns on Comedy Central, like I wouldn't clock that. Like I'm sure they were doing it then, but like when I watch modern clips, I'm very aware that they are reading a cue card that they're probably just seeing for the first time right then and there. Like famously, they tweak the show right up until they go live.
Steve, do you think they still use cue cards to this day?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, they do.
absolutely do.
Not just a teleprompter.
No, I think it's actually
cue
like
cards.
physical cue cards. Yeah,
Interesting.
because they need to just
Okay.
like make quick changes on the fly. So yeah, I think they do use just like ink and paper. Yeah. So all this to say is that Wayne's World was a standout skit for this show, and I think it helped emphasize Mike Myers' own unique kind of thing. Like his thing is sort of hard to define.
Well, it's interesting because like he was such a character actor, but Wayne is so much closer to himself than like say Austin Powers,
Yeah.
or the Love Guru, or other characters that he's played.
And he's kind of just doing like a thick Canadian accent, even though he's set in Illinois. But he is kind of just doing his own accent. And then you have Dana Carvey, who is, for my money, the best performer that's ever been on Saturday Night Live. I think he is the funniest. I think he's the best. And he hasn't had the post SNL career that he deserved, but I think he is number one on the college. Like it's a toss up between him and Phil Hartman for me. I think those two were like the OGs, but I don't know. He's up there for me.
I'm a big Bill Hader fan.
I do love Bill Hader. Bill Hader's in the conversation for sure. But, you know, it's all interesting. Either way, like I think, like I said, the movie succeeds because it doesn't stick to the format that they establish in the show. And I think the movie itself is very shaggy. Like it has a plot, but it doesn't. It takes lots of like deviations. It takes lots of little like side things. There's kind of like little skits like built into the movie throughout, but it's not a sketch comedy movie. They break format. They break the fourth wall. They're having a lot of fun just kind of being irreverent. And
I forgot how meta this movie was.
oh yeah,
because then there's multiple times where they just start talking to the camera.
the three endings are like where they
three
break to have all the
endings.
commercials.
Yeah.
Like
And then I loved the Terminator 2 reference.
what a great get too. They actually got Robert Patrick like fresh off that movie.
Yeah, he just like looks out and goes, "Oh no!"
See, they tried to follow that up in Wayne's World 2 with the dinosaur from Jurassic Park, and it doesn't work quite as well. Like, it's a bit sweatier, but, like, that's such a good gag, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, and I think kind of the secret sauce of this movie is that it's very warm-hearted, and the guys, like, as much as, like, a lot of the press you read, it's like, oh, two nitwits opened their own show. It's like, no, these guys are actually not dumb. Like, they're amiable and they're friendly, but they're actually more... like high status, like Bugs Bunny types.
Yeah.
You know, they're fucking with everybody, including like the audience, because they're hip to it. You know, they're kind of ahead of everybody in that regard.
They're ahead of everybody, and they're so much fun. They're so likable. Like Garth, like you talk about Dana Carvey. Garth is so likable.
He's a sweetheart.
He's such a sweetheart, and he's just like, I love how he's like this quintessentially demure, shy guy that is just like hiding behind his hair in such an adorable way. And I love the gag where he looks at that very attractive I feel like she was really famous. Was she married to like a Rolling Stone?
No, that's Donna Dixon. She's been well, close to a Rolling Stone. She's been married to Dan Aykroyd for like 40 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but she was like a model and like kind of a sex symbol of the 70s and 80s.
But I love like when he like just gets blown off the
Yeah. Yeah, he just like swings back, like blows backwards, and then his little fantasy of him singing "Foxy Lady" is so cute.
So we can talk about the music, but first, I love "Foxy Lady." It's
That's
like one
such a
of
good song.
such a great song, and the way he curls his lips when he sings "Foxy,"
And he does a little like 2 fingers for the ears, like yeah, it's so cute. I mean, I think this movie has a lot of affection for this like metalhead subculture. Like even all the guys that are in their crew are just like big dumb sweeties who are kind of down for everything. There's one guy who just can't stop saying he loves everybody because he's just so overwhelmed with love for everything. Like I feel like the perception we have of this scene around this time is like in Arnold Schwarzenegger movies where he has to like bust into a club and kill a bunch of people and like stop a drug dealer, you know. These are not those dudes. These are all like super chill, super happy guys who just like loud music.
Yeah, which is usually how that goes.
In my experience, yeah, right? Like horror fans and metal fans tend to be like the sweetest people.
I was a member of the Rock and Metal Society at Aberdeen University.
Oh, very nice.
And they were the sweetest guys. There were about 40 of them, and there was like 3 women. And we would go out to a metal club, and like it was the safest, most protected, warmest people that I've ever met. And they were just such sweethearts.
Yeah, it's not even like a gatekeepy kind of thing, you know. They're always pretty like chill and welcoming to people, you know. It's and I think it's helpful like with them and the horror fans because they have an outlet, you know, for all this like dark rage and stuff that people tend to quash, you know, but they have an outlet and that makes them happier people, I think. In my experience. I'm not speaking universally, of course, but yeah, I think everything just kind of works here. And I feel like this movie has such an outsized impact on pop culture of the era. Like all of the slang that's in this movie has kind of just become like part of the lexicon. Like, so people, you know, I know The Office is like hugely popular now. This is that's where She Said comes from. Like, I guess it goes all the way back to the 1800s where it's like an old slang phrase or whatever. But like, this is the movie that popularized That's What She Said. This is the movie that began as if. This began saying not after saying something. You know, a lot of these like Borat would take that, and like lots of these things would be co-opted into other parts of culture. But it kind of all starts here with this very goofy, very unassuming movie. And then one of the biggest impacts that this movie had was with the song Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
So I want to dig into this a little bit. Like, Queen released Bohemian Rhapsody in 1975, and I think it was like a modest success back then. It did better in the UK than it did here. I think here it only reached number 9 on the Billboard charts. That's the highest it ever got back in the 70s. And then people kind of forgot about it. They look at it as like a goofy, like B-tier Queen song. You know, it's like, oh, yeah, this is no like We Will Rock You or anything like that. And then this movie comes out. There's the great scene where they're like all headbanging to this song in the car. And after it becomes popular, the soundtrack is a huge seller. And Bohemian Rhapsody became the number 2 song on the Billboard charts. And it stayed in the top 10 for 17 weeks. It's now gone 10 times platinum. And it's the title of the biopic about Queen. Like, so it got this boost from like this weird prog rock kind of castaway from the 70s to the most iconic song from the most iconic band.
And also probably helped to reintroduce Queen to the next generation.
100%. I didn't know who they were.
Being born around the time Bohemian Rhapsody came out. Or even later because, you know, it was 17 years difference.
Yeah. And now it's just kind of like undeniable. It's like you'll hear people do this in karaoke all the time. Like
I'm a bit of a hippie, and I was living in a co-op with like 20 people, and we were out at like a local bar in North Austin, and we were all sitting at a picnic table, and we did the whole Bohemian Rhapsody. Like when somebody dropped, somebody picked it up, and we just did it, and it was just like, it's like the Bohemian Rhapsody is such a communal experience. It belongs to all of us.
I remember we had a company party at one point, and there was karaoke at the end, which was usually just a lot of drunk people doing karaoke. But I was on a team that was pretty closely knit at that point, and we were kind of joking around saying we should do something.
Yeah.
And me or somebody else suggested that we should do Bohemian Rhapsody. And the person who was the most wanting to do karaoke was like, I don't know what that is. And we're like, what is wrong with you? And then literally 7-8 minutes later, somebody and like 2 people are doing Bohemian Rhapsody. And he goes, "This is the song I wanted us to do." And we're like, "This is Bohemian Rhapsody." And he
Right.
goes,
You just didn't know the name. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He didn't know the name of it, but he knew the song.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
And this was the youngest guy on the team.
I heard this song for the first time on the radio around the time this movie came out, and I thought it was a comedy song because they were doing like the. I thought it was so funny that they're going like, "I see a little silhouette of a man." Like, I always thought that was so funny, and like the Scaramouche and all that. Like, so I thought this was like a joke song.
I want to see you sing this song at karaoke just like that.
Just in this voice. Oh, nothing really matters. Everyone can see.
Now you're going Kermit with
Yeah.
it. I kind of like that
That's
direction
Kermit,
too.
yeah.
Nothing piggy here. No.
Yeah, I can't do it. But yeah, I mean that's pretty cool that like a movie can kind of give a boost to this song in that way, like and sort of reintroduce it into pop culture in like a way that I don't think anybody really intended. I know Mike Myers did insist on using this song. Like the studio wanted a Guns N' Roses song because they felt like that was something more that these guys would listen to, and Myers like actually threw his weight around a little bit and threatened to walk off the movie if he didn't get this song. So and it was probably
really,
cheaper than a Guns N' Roses song at this time too.
It definitely fits them as characters and as a group more than listening to Welcome to the Jungle or something in the
Right,
car.
because they're not snobby. That's the thing. They're not snobby about
Right.
the music. They're kind of just like a good song is a good song. you know?
They're there to have a good time, not to listen to cool rock songs.
Right.
And let's celebrate Tia Carrera for singing all of her own songs.
Okay, I was talking about
Oh.
this. Yeah, I was talking about this like watching the movie. I'm just like, it is surprising to me that Tia Carrera didn't like super blow up after this movie. It felt
Yeah.
like she was being groomed, like she was going to be the next something. But she's
Disney
the next.
movie
The next.
type thing.
I don't know
I
who
think
the
she
next
was
Julia
locked
Roberts. I
into
don't
a
know.
TV because I was interested. I thought the exact same things when I rewatched today. I was like, because like I know Tia Carrera,
Yeah.
both from this and from the underrated syndicated television show Relic Hunter.
Relic Hunter.
Of which I love. It was
Tomb Raider? What's Tomb Raider? We've never seen Tomb Raider. We're
what
called
is
Relic
Tomb
Hunter.
Ra- or Relic Hunter.
Yeah.
We're a cross between Indiana Jones and Xena.
Patent pending. Yeah.
But I was like, why didn't she blow up? And like, I think she was in a General Hospital like contract that like
Oh, is
really
that it?
like
Okay.
handcuffed her success.
Because she had the Wayne's World movies. She had True Lies, where she's like the villain, and then Relic Hunter, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the end of her arc. And she is somebody who is like a multiple threat. Like she's very beautiful, and she's also a pretty solid comedic actress, and she can sing.
And she did Lilo's from Lilo and Stitch's sister. as
That's
well.
right. She's really good in that. Yeah.
She is really good in that, and she's a really good actress. And like, I haven't seen her later stuff because evidently she was on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh,
and
see, I've never seen it.
Yeah, I love dancing. I have never watched Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. I'm not interested in ballroom
I
dance.
feel like
don't know why.
there's a generational gap when people. Like, there's a certain age when people just stopped watching network TV. And,
There 100% is. Yeah.
and then
it's-
there's like this big divide. Like, and I think some of it also comes down to like, the rise of Trump with The Apprentice was like the
Yeah.
people watching him at home, getting indoctrinated to liking him.
Yeah. Oh, he's just a charming rascal. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like that's another thing with network TV. Wayne's World was always on TV.
That one really helped too. This is like a basic cable staple. Like it's anytime you turn on a TNT or a TBS in a hotel room, like in the 90s, this was on, you know.
It's like this or Die Hard.
Yeah. They've been bandying about the idea for a sequel for a long time. You know, this was like a quick like double tap that came out between 92 and 93, both movies, and that's it. Mike Myers is pretty famously difficult to deal with, and I think there was a big rift between him and Dana Carvey because Mike Myers stole Dr. Evil from him. Like, Dr. Evil is Dana Carvey's impression of Lorne Michaels. And that, like, he feels that Mike Myers kind of stole the character that he was doing and like turned it into his movie and didn't even invite him to be in the film. And he clashed with Penelope Spheris on this movie. Like he kind of clashes with everybody. So like, I think the ship has kind of sailed. They did a Super Bowl commercial a couple years ago. Do you guys remember this? Like they brought both Myers and Carvey back and they got in costume and everything. And I don't want to like
was
shame
that not this most recent Super Bowl?
I think it was the one before this, but I could be wrong. But the last 3 years are all one big chunk of time. Yeah,
Pandemic brain.
But like I don't want to like shame anyone's appearance or anything, but like they're both older. That's not a problem. I think maybe they were using makeup or a filter or some kind of botched plastic surgery, but they both looked really waxy and weird. Like their heads were gigantic, and it just made me feel a little sad. And it was for like an Xfinity commercial or something, you know. So it's not like it wasn't even like a worthwhile reason to bring them back.
It's so interesting because like if you think about what you said earlier about them being like an early form of a podcast,
yeah,
it'd be so cool to see Wayne and Garth like doing a podcast
Absolutely.
rather than a cable network show. I think it would be so much fun.
Or like an animated series or something. Like, yeah.
I just don't like. They have such great chemistry on stage, or on
the show,
film.
yeah.
And like they're so like. I love it when they break the fourth wall. Like,
yes.
And they're breaking the fourth wall constantly, and they have so many little bits and party that like the whole. It's just so likable. And I love Rob Lowe in this. We have not talked about Rob Lowe.
We haven't talked about Rob Lowe. This is a weird thing I want to highlight too. Rob Lowe was in two like really iconic 90s comedies. It was Wayne's World and Tommy Boy. He's uncredited in both, and I don't understand why.
Which one was Rob Lowe?
He's the villain. He's like the slick like corporate guy. Like
Gotcha.
yeah.
Still incredibly successful guy. He's in a TV show right now.
Yeah, and people kind of forget like at this point in his career, he was kind of persona non grata because he was just off of a sex tape scandal with some young ladies who turned out to be maybe slightly south of 18. I think they did finally like it was one of those things like the girls came forward and said, yeah, we lied about our age. Like he wasn't out seeking young women, but he did make a sex tape with some young women. And so I think it took a little bit to rehab his career. He was kind of a leading man in the 80s, and then the 90s he kept kind of a lower profile in smaller villain roles like this, and then Parks and Rec gave him kind of a career resurgence. But he is a great like slick asshole. Like, you know, he's who you need like when you it sounds gross, but yeah.
That's the name of my new metal band.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Great slick asshole.
Rob Lowe and the Slick Assholes, yeah. Yeah, I think he is really good in this, like in just kind of a perfectly smarmy kind of way.
Well, he leads off because he's like this stock character is so popular in the 80s, but he definitely brings this stock character into the 90s by speaking Cantonese,
right.
being more in tune with the women rather than just exploiting the women, and being eye candy for the women. Because in the 80s, the guys were just like over the top, but they weren't eye candy for the like there wasn't like and like this film being shot by a woman, I can't help but think that she definitely brought some of the female gaze to the screen.
Yeah, but a shout out to Penelope Spheris for directing this. She did awesome. And again, she and Mike Myers did not get along. She was not invited back for the sequel, which is a bummer because I think she probably could have done a better job with that. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot to that. Like that he is more cultured and worldly, and he's never like outwardly gross to Cassandra.
Sleazy.
Yeah, he's not. He's just kind of working the charm, and like, you know, obviously he's set up as the guy who just is everything that Wayne isn't. You know, like he is very rich, he's very successful, he's very serious. You know, and so it provides that kind of counterpoint, and it helps give Wayne a little bit more in personality because now he's got this insecurity, you know, that he's not going to be good enough, and I think he works really well. Like, Yeah, I mean, just everything in this movie just kind of pops for me. Like, there's nothing in this where I look back on and kind of cringe.
That was really surprising for me because I mentioned, like, going back and watching old comedy can be a dicey situation.
It really can. And even Wayne's World 2 has like this protracted like kung fu battle with James Hong where they're like poorly dubbed, and it's just like kind of, it's a little iffy. That part makes you cringe a little bit. This one is still pretty evergreen. Like, there's nothing particularly offensive here.
Yeah, and apparently Mike Myers actually knew how to speak Cantonese. That was
I believe
something
so,
that I googled while watching the movie. I was like, is this, I don't know if this is actually words that they're saying because I am an uncultured person.
Yeah.
And apparently, no, yeah, he knew Cantonese, and that was probably why that was the language that was chosen.
I might be wrong if I feel like I have it in my head that one of his parents was a diplomat at some point, like various postings, like a Canadian diplomat, but I could be confusing that with somebody else. But either way, I think we can all agree that the greatest legacy that this movie has to offer is the Super Nintendo video game entitled Wayne's World. I think it's time that we get into this because
not the banging soundtrack.
As we've described, like, this is a pretty shaggy movie that like it has some fun, it has some like goofy little breaking the format moments, but nothing about it particularly lends itself to a action video game. So how did they approach this? All right, so this game came out, it was on the NES and the Super NES. It came out in 1993, so a little after the movie had already come out and come onto video and everything like that. So it's definitely capitalizing on that trend. This is it's a hard to describe game because it simultaneously doesn't get this franchise at all, but also like tries to imbue a little bit of the spirit of it, I would argue. Like, I think it's trying to. Like, there are a lot of games that, like, from this era especially, where this was clearly just, like, a bad, like, something knockoff. It was clearly just, like, it was clearly a game meant for a different purpose. This feels like it was built from the ground up to be a Wayne's World game.
I don't know
They just
about that.
got it wrong.
I have to disagree with you on that. I think this is some sort of, like, musical education game gone horribly awry.
They
teach you that you should be hitting your bagpipes.
So for anybody who has no idea what's going on in this game, it's just like an old-timey side-scrolly platformery type of game where you play as Wayne with a guitar, trying to go rescue Garth, and it is very monotonous. But you are just we never got past the first level.
It's
we really tried.
Monotonous, but hard.
Monotonous but hard, and you only get a few hits of damage. Every time you go down, there's no checkpoints. You have to go back to the beginning. But you just shoot instruments that are fighting you with a guitar.
Okay, yeah, let's explain.
Blast.
Let's explain a little bit of the premise of this game because this is insane. All right, it is taking something that is mentioned offhand in the movie. There's a scene where they're interviewing their new sponsor. He's the owner of an arcade. And he says his most popular game is called Xantar, where you fight this giant gelatinous cube. All right, so as this game opens, we get this really bad, like, digitized image of Wayne and Garth doing their show. And they're giving a top 10 list of the top 10 worst games they played at Noah's Arcade. And some of these titles are kind of funny. Like, there's like Regarding Henry the Game, like, or weird things like that. Timmy the Tick or something like that.
Important thing to note, there is no voice lines for this entire section. It's all text only.
It's Super Nintendo, so you're getting audio samples, but like not much.
Yeah.
They try and do like the extreme close-up thing. It looks really weird. But then they explain that like the number one worst game they played was Xantar the Cube because turns out Garth got sucked into the arcade cabinet and kidnapped by this cube, and Wayne had to go in after him. Normal thing that happens to every person all the time. And then they do the doodly-doo, and they go back and they have a flashback, and now it's Wayne who's like a cartoon with a large head and a guitar, and you are fighting living instruments. The first level's supposed to be a music store, but apparently it's the most like... It's a music store designed by Clive Barker or something. It's like this circuitous, like, endless labyrinth full of animatronic things that are trying to kill you. And there's, like, electricity everywhere. And, like, your only weapon is this guitar that can only shoot in a straight line in front of you. You can get some little power-ups that like make your sound waves a little bigger or a little wigglier, but they all do about the same thing, right? Like I didn't notice any big difference.
Like there was the one that made it shoot faster. However, the rate that it shot was never the problem.
Right, that was never the issue. Yeah, that was never the issue. The issue was just that it like you don't have range with this weapon, and that usually the way the game, I think the fact that your sprite for Wayne is so big that you don't have a lot of room to maneuver into a place where you can safely like take these things out.
And also, because it's a platform, you're basically jumping onto like speaker cabs and stuff to get around.
There's lots of electricity between them.
Yeah, and so the like hitboxes for the platforms is weirdly small.
Yes.
So half the time you're like halfway jumping onto it. You're at least getting half of you on top. And you still fall through because it doesn't register that you're on it.
Like, yeah, it's clear to your eyes that you have made it onto this platform, but the game strongly disagrees.
Yes.
It's like, no, I counter, sir. I counter your argument.
So there are bagpipes that shoot things.
Yes.
There are large drums with cymbals that try to get you. But by far,
With a tuba
the most villainous thing are the kazoos.
Fucking kazoos. Okay, they make this horrible little sound. They don't sound quite like kazoos, but you can see that they're like kind of floating around. And these are aerial enemies. And remember, you only have one attack that only moves straight in a straight line in front of you. So you can't shoot these things above you. So you just have to kind of avoid them. Or you can use this game's big power-up, which of course is the swing. All right, it took us a little bit to figure out what this was because I had to look up the manual and figure out what this was and how it works. It's like we keep finding this arrow. It's just like an up arrow, and when Wayne gets it, he says swing, but like that's not necessarily like tipping us off about what this is because he's saying like lines all the time. Like every time you get a power up, he says excellent. Every time you take damage, he says not. Like so you're hearing a lot of his voice at this time. I'm not thinking much about it. Then we look it up. It turns out your swing is actually a room clearing attack. Like you press the A button.
Screen clearing. That's
screen
more
clearing.
important.
Yeah, screen clearing. Basically everything is going to die while Wayne makes like a boner pose with his guitar. So this is a game literally about you using your boner to kill kazoos, which is a part of the movie I think I missed.
Yeah, literally, it kills everything that's on screen, but there's rarely two things on the screen, and it's almost always two fucking kazoos coming at you like grackles in an HEB parking lot.
That's something for the Texas listeners. Yeah,
it's such and then there's no rooms. It's just platforms, and when you get to the edge of a wall, it's just like a cinder block wall that goes up a long distance, and eventually you meander around it.
So, dear listener, you will learn I hate jumping games. However,
and I'm sorry in advance. You're going to be playing a lot of them.
I know. I've
come to terms.
I have another thing to say about that in a second.
Yeah.
But they have these fun jumping on drums, and I think that's the funnest part of the game.
That was the highlight.
Is jumping from drum to drum to drum to drum to drum. That was the funnest part. But like this reminded me of. We've all gone soft.
Yeah.
We've all gone soft as video game players because we can save. And we don't have this we don't have this endless like I don't know, when I play a game, I like save every 5 seconds. Well, maybe not every 5 seconds, but I do excessively save. And this, you're just like, oh nope, you're dead. You're dead. Nope.
Back
or
to the
you
very
dead.
beginning.
You take it for granted that the game is saving itself, like without you having to worry about it. Yeah.
Let me say that there's a very useless system in the game, which is that you have lives.
Yeah.
And when you hit the end of the lives, you get the game over screen. However, no matter what happens when you die, whether or not you have lives, you still start over.
Yeah, you're starting all the way over.
The only thing is that if you really care about your score, then
and who cares about a score at this point?
Yeah.
This is not an arcade game. This is not like a competitive game. It's also insane that this is one player. because the very premise of this show and these characters is that they're a dyad, right? They're like a dyad in the Force, and you put them together and like you can have a fun like,
dyad in the Force.
they're like a dyad in the Force.
We're not gonna start talking about Star Wars.
I'm not talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about that normal thing everybody knows about dyads in the Force.
Everyone knows.
Everyone knows it and loves it. Yeah. So I mean, that's this is kind of custom built to be a 2-player game, and it feels so weird to have Garth be the Princess Peach of this game, basically. Anyway, that's a digression, but yeah.
Yeah, and so I think we played for almost an hour, and we never even beat the first level, constantly passing around.
We beat the first stage of the first level, but there are 4 levels in total. I think they each have like 3 stages.
And then, well, we were playing on advanced modern hardware with the capability of save states.
Yes.
So we took a save state at that point because there was no checkpoint.
No checkpoints.
If you died, even if you just ran out of hits and, you respawned, you were at the very beginning anyway.
Yeah.
So it meant nothing that there was this here.
I mean, last week we played the Mummy game, which had a very clearly laid out map. Like, it also had very big labyrinthine levels, but there was a map. It was pretty clear on how to navigate through it. This game, like, I feel like the whole level is just one massive world that requires you to, like, go down, go up, go left, right. You're never quite sure where you need to go. There's no real arrows indicating, so it's very easy to get lost.
And every single... To paint a picture, it's like... You're supposed to be at an instrument store, like a music store, but the entire stage is basically built with the like metal scaffolding that's used for like rock sets.
Yeah.
For like this is the system, we have the speakers hanging here, we have some lights hanging from here. It's like all of that scaffolding is what the entire level is built out of.
This could have been easily repurposed as like backstage at a show. Like that would make sense for these characters. They go to concerts in the movie.
And there's only like 30 total. What the hell?
That was a dog.
Oh god.
That's Ailish making a dog noise.
That scared the shit out of me. There's only like 30 assets total for this entire level.
Yeah. And
we were there for an hour. And I'm talking like every platform. There was 2 different platforms. I think it was really only like one type of platform.
Yeah.
And then the scaffolding was all the background with just the occasional sign that said either no stairway or 500 volts. That's it.
I mean, they are keeping the no stairway joke.
Yeah, they are keeping the no stairway joke, which it's really fun because like, I've been to actual guitar stores that have had signs that say no stairway, and I don't know whether or not it's like what started first, the no stairway from Wayne and Garth, Wayne's World, or whether or not no stairway was something that they saw at a store and then they brought it in.
My very loose understanding, like my remembrance of like, having a brief period in my high school years where I wanted to learn guitar and then realizing I sucked at it and stopping, is that Stairway is kind of one of those songs that people stereotypically like to break out to prove how good they are at guitar. So like you go into and it's like a 7 or 8 minute long song. So they're probably just like, no, we don't want you sitting here playing this song for 8 minutes. Like that's probably like the bane of the music store.
It's like the modern equivalent of showing up at a coffee shop and somebody's playing fucking
Wonderwall.
Today.
Yeah. We were thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love it though if this whole thing got started because they couldn't get the rights to Stairway to Heaven.
I'm wondering if that's the case. That would be pretty funny.
Little sidebar. One time it was another company outing thing where there's a bunch of people went to a bar down on Rainy Street after work, and after a little while somebody started playing Wonderwall, and I'm like, great, this is what it's going to be. And then they switched into another cover of another song, and I'm like, good thing they didn't finish Wonderwall.
Yeah.
They get a solid chunk of the way through, and then I start hearing Wonderwall again. This was a cover medley where the bridge between every song was going back into Wonderwall, and then doing a verse/chorus of Wonderwall, and then going back into another song. This man made Wonderwall go on for like 20 minutes. I was going to cry.
This is a very Austin thing. This sounds extremely Austin to me. Yeah.
Speaking of repetitive music, let's give a moment of silence, or not literally, but a metaphorical moment of silence for all the great genius video game music composers, because that was not here.
That was not here. Yeah. Oh no, this was actually by John Williams, but he was just slumming. He's just like, oh, my cat ran across my synthesizer.
They legitimately, it was like they had played Doom.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, I kind of liked this, but this might be a little too extreme for the Wayne's World game. So they tuned it down.
It did sound like Doom. Yeah.
They toned it down a bit and only made maybe 15 to 20 seconds of music and then just looped it.
Yeah. It's just a non-stop loop. And then keep in mind, your weapon is music. So every time you press the button to launch your sound attack, you're hearing the same exact note. And as you discovered, like sometimes the best way to walk through a level is just by spamming on that guitar button to clear out things that are ahead of you. It's not a bad strategy, but it also means you're hearing na on top of the already droning like music.
And the worst part is that it doesn't even sound like you're actually strumming a guitar.
Yeah.
It just sounds like some weirdly distorted, like, synth note.
Yeah.
And you're like, this maybe sounds like a guitar.
Well, and they have, like, in the opening credits, they have kind of a digitized version of the closing credits song from the movie, like the Wayne's World song that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey are singing. And you could have used that. Like, it's not necessarily less annoying, but it would have a little verisimilitude, you know?
Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the loop, and that probably would have been more tolerable because the loop duration would have been longer.
Yeah, it was. It was just kind of really repetitive.
I don't know, man. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is a banger.
I mean,
it's a banger.
Oh, man, I'm just always waiting for the beat to drop in that.
Oh,
yeah.
Boom.
Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star! Oh, yeah.
Now I want to see a club DJ who just does like nursery rhyme.
Public domain, yeah. All right, everybody, we're going to do the ABC song. Make some noise, 4K. Yeah, anyway. I should be a DJ. I think I miss my calling. But yeah, the Wayne's World video game. Would you be shocked to believe that there weren't any more after this?
No.
There were no more. There were no more SNL games after this either. Like because I don't think you could make a game of Night at the Roxbury necessarily, unless it's like a weird rhythm action game or something. But yeah.
I would be surprised to find out if more effort went into this development than the game of E.T.
It's hard to say. I mean,
and like I'm assuming because E.T. was one person.
E.T. was one person.
This one
1
had to
month,
be 3 max.
1 pound of cocaine. Yeah.
This had to be like they paid a dude to come in with a synthesizer for an hour.
Yeah.
And that's where they got the soundtrack. And then they had either one developer who also did the art, or they just contracted an artist to make art for something, and they just used it for this game.
Yeah.
Because there really wasn't much going on. It was a very gray and brown game.
Yeah.
And not in any way, shape, or form was it interesting or complex.
Right. Like
the bongos was the best part, jumping on the drums and the little bongo type thing.
That's the thing. It's one of those horrible cases where like the best thing you can say about it is that I've played worse. You know, like I would argue E.T. was probably worse.
Yeah,
you know?
E.T. was worse.
Yeah, but you know, that's not when that's the best thing you can say about your game. That's not really glowing praise.
There was a lot of games from the 90s that played that had the exact same general play to it.
Yeah,
none of them were good.
None of them were good.
Unless they were Disney.
Yeah, the Disney ones kind of knocked it out of the park.
The Disney ones, to me, that's like a more advanced version of this because they had, you know, actual things happening. They had multiple levels. The levels were more straightforward.
And they had better developers. They were working with like Virgin Interactive or Interplay. Like, they had better games.
And here we had just this absolute labyrinth that there was no natural progression in your mind of like, this is where I'm going, this is where I've been. It was the amount of times we went, have we have we been here before? I think we're going the right way.
That's
like we have
yeah.
to go with the tried and true. There's bad guys over here, so that means we're probably going in a correct direction.
Yeah, if you struggle with like keeping your directions straight, then you're gonna have a real hard time with this game.
Yeah. There was one part that we found 2 different spots where this happened. Just a missile attacks you, but it's only on screen for like half a second.
Yeah, you don't have time to prepare. You don't have time to dodge.
Yeah.
By the time you are on the screen, like near where it's going to be, it's hit you already.
And you also
like, you're done.
don't even have the ability to do anything about it. But at one point, I was like, I feel like I'm someplace we haven't been.
Maybe,
but
yeah.
I haven't seen the missile yet. I just missed it. And that's what happened because I couldn't tell what was happening. And then we figured out, oh, okay, the missile was basically useless.
Well, you know what you got to do, of course. You got to use your swing.
Yeah.
You got to swing that flute. Swing that. I think it might have been a flute missile. Like it looked.
Maybe
in keeping
it was a
with
flute.
In keeping with the theme.
Ever play
Flute missile?
Lounge Lizard Larry?
Oh, yeah.
Because I was trying to think of
Leisure Suit Larry.
Because I was trying to think what other video game might have powers of boners, and that was the only one.
That might.
Okay, the segue makes a lot more sense now.
I was trying to think too, because like I'm thinking of games like Conker's Bad Fur Day on N64, and like that's all poop humor, but I don't think there's much like boner humor in that.
I was like, where?
Oh, there was a little bit.
You said whatever you said, and I'm like, that doesn't ring anything. And you said Leisure Suit Larry, and I'm like, that's a very different kind of game.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. Now
like
I
point
see,
and click,
where you were going for boner humor, boner powers.
Yeah.
Connections.
Yeah. I mean, there was a Caligula game, but I didn't play that one. No, no.
Was there really?
There's
Are you
not.
making that up?
No, I'm making that up. Everything out of my mouth is a lie. All right, well, let's give our rankings here. So each week we are ranking the games and movies that we just played. So is this going to be a good movie, good game, a good movie, bad game, a bad movie, good game, or a bad movie, bad game? What do you guys think?
I think it's pretty solidly in the good movie, bad game category.
I feel like so many of our games are going to be living in that zone. But, I'm looking forward to the ones that really transcend. I'm with you on that. Yeah,
J-Man is going to enjoy each and every one of them.
Oh, 100%, especially the platformers. Yeah.
I'm going to say good game. Oh, wait, sorry.
Ooh,
No. Okay,
Plot
wait.
twist.
Good movie.
She really loved those bongos.
Good I did love those bongos. Good movie, bad game, with the asterisk that it's not E.T.
It's not
Yeah.
E.T. It's not E.T.
Yeah.
I feel like that asterisk is going to apply to a lot of games. I'm really curious to see what the game is that's finally worse.
Now,
It must be out there. There's going to be a game that we hate more.
I think if we found one that was frustrating enough, maybe.
Yeah.
now I want to know if somebody just made a game that was essentially the drum sequences.
Yeah.
You're just jumping around, bouncing. It's like jumping on a trampoline, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. See? Yeah.
But it's like Flappy Bird style. You're just trying to navigate horizontal or vertically instead of horizontally.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it happening. Developers, get on this. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. I've got kind of a big curveball to throw at you guys next week. A movie I'm willing to guarantee you've never heard of, because I hadn't heard of it until researching this. And a game that you would not believe in any way, shape, or form is based on this movie. We're watching a movie called Gotcha, with an exclamation point at the end. This is it's an erotic thriller slash wait for the slash. Erotic thriller slash paintball adventure.
What?
Cannot wait to figure out what the fuck this movie is. I don't know if it's available. I don't know if we can find it anywhere, but it's got Anthony Edwards from ER when he's very young. And I'm so curious to see what the fuck this thing is. So we're watching Gotcha, exclamation point, and then we're playing the game, which is called Gotcha the Game. It's a wild ride we're in for on this one.
I hope it says erotic is the movie.
I mean, what could be more erotic than swinging a kazoo? But we'll see. We'll see. Wayne's World set the template.
It was swinging two kazoos.
Yes. Oh, I've just got confirmation that Gotcha is on Vudu. So thank you. So we will have I've got a money petty in the other room. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. We will see you next time for Gotcha.